Well, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix for 2022 is very much in the books, and the winner is Max Verstappen. I mean, wow, what a drive indeed from the Red Bull man. He's led pretty much from start to finish, untroubled throughout the victory. I mean, it tells you a lot that towards the end, his margin for victory was so dominant that the race camera crew actually more focused on the battle for third and fourth between George Russell and Valtteri Bottas. In case you're wondering who won that race, it was indeed George Russell who held his nerve, finished third, and but that doesn't really. He didn't finish third. I'm sorry, he finished fourth. But the fact is, the main story for today is not just the fact that Max Verstappen has won his second Grand Prix of the season, is also the fact that a certain Charles Leclerc, who were running in third place, ended up suffering a bit of a late spin due to being on the throttle a little too hard for his liking, probably, and he spun. He did end up doing some damage to his nose. He then had to take a sojourn into the pits, but he was able to continue, thankfully for him. Got his nose changed, got fresh tires on, but was only able to make it up till seventh place, if I'm not wrong. And it says a lot that this will be seen as a major points drop for Leclerc and Ferrari, because the cardinal rule when your rival, when your title rival is leading a race and is being that dominant, is that you try and get as many points back as you possibly can, or to save as many points. So the goal at that point should be finish as high on the grid as possible, maybe nick that point which is available for the fastest lap. It's about damage limitation, and I think for Ferrari it was a torrid home race, because as we know, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix takes place in Imola, which is in Italy and is very, very close to Ferrari's home base of Maranello. But it was a horrid race for the Ferrari boys from start to finish, because in the opening lap itself, Carlos Sainz was hit by Daniel Ricciardo, ended up spinning out, and had to retire from the race in the first lap itself. Meanwhile, obviously, it was a good race, a mixed race also for McLaren, because whilst Danny Ricciardo has finished the race last, Lando Norris ended up taking third place thanks to Leclerc's late error. So, obviously, I think it was a good race for them too. We, I think, have a comment, but I am unable to see it. Anyway, okay, if you can send that message back, I would appreciate it. I'd like to take all of your comments. But major talking point of the race, again, Verstappen getting that all-important victory. And he's very much now. That means that he and Leclerc have taken. So BH Karthik says Mercedes sabotaged Lewis with used tires in the start, and then the pit stop, proper second driver treatment. Look, I don't think we should be making calls about who's the first driver and who's the second driver, but I do agree that they do need to be looking at their pit stops. Of course, they weren't helped by the fact that Esteban Ocon got a bit of a jump and then kind of ended up colliding into Lewis. So he did get a 5-second penalty for that, but it's also worth noting that yes, Hamilton ended up having a very lonely race back in the, not even in the midfield, but in the back of the midfield. So Love Rami says now 2-2 races divided of the season between Supermax and Leclerc. Well, I absolutely agree with you. It's 2 race wins each, and we have our title fight for 2022, because it is indeed going down between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. So Pranay Saw says, Maxi, absolutely perfect comeback from the Bulls. You know what? I have to agree with you, because they were very, very solid even during the sprint. And both Red Bulls, it must be said, made a very, very good start to the race. Because if you remember, Sergio Perez was starting the race in P3, and he got the jump on Leclerc early on. That helped Red Bull not only stave off Leclerc and ensure that he doesn't have to fight Verstappen, it's also added to the points which they get in that all-important Constructors' Championship. So I think dream weekend for Red Bull. I think it will be doubly pleasing for them, the fact that they managed to do it at Ferrari's home turf. So yeah, definitely very, very big weekend for not only Supermax but also Sergio Perez and the entire Red Bull team. In contrast, bit of a nightmarish weekend for the Ferraris, because Carlos Sainz crashed out first lap. Leclerc suffered a very late spin and thus was unfortunately, his chances of finishing third were absolutely gone at that point. BH Karthik, taking another comment from you, says Lewis doesn't win a Silverstone in Brazil. We need to arrest Toto Wolff. His streak should not be broken. Look, I don't think arresting Toto Wolff is the answer, but I do think Mercedes have a lot of work to do when it comes to getting the best out of that car, because so far that car looks exactly like how it's been performing, and that is a midfield car. It doesn't look like it's a car that's good enough to be challenging for even podium finishes, let alone race wins. So I don't know. I think it's too early to say that 2002 is a write-off because again, it is worth noting 19 more races still to go in the season. And this year's development war is going to be fought at the rate of knots. Because again, we know new car concepts, so teams are going to be learning a lot of things. But I do think that Mercedes need upgrades pronto. Otherwise, there's going to be no chance of them actually getting anywhere close to the front of the grid. As things stands, it's very much a battle between the Ferrari boys and the Red Bull boys. So, but of course, there were other interesting factors that are worth noting in this race. I am going to pull up as we speak on my phone. I'm going to pull up the grid. So Love Rami asks, what's the next Grand Prix race pace of the season? I'm very much excited and eager for the next year Las Vegas trip return in F1. I mean, I also agree with you in that sense. I too am excited to see how it goes when they do return to Las Vegas. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the next race is at Barcelona. So which it's at the Circuit de Catalunya. But I will check that and let you guys know where exactly, the next race is. So just give me a second on that, and I am going to get back to you on that. So if we're talking about the grid, obviously there was a bit of an interesting. BH Karthik points out, yes, indeed, it's indeed a first time. It's going to be at Miami in America, so that's also a new circuit which is being thrown in this time around. The street circuit in Miami, and obviously F1's new American owners very keen to try and break into that American market because we not only have the US GP at the Circuit of the Americas, Texas. We have a Miami Grand Prix. Next year is going to be Las Vegas. So obviously another interesting battle which I have to talk about from this race was the one between George Russell, the new Mercedes driver, against Valtteri Bottas, the man who he replaced. Bottas, of course, now driving for Alfa Romeo. Did very nearly get the jump on Russell many times, especially in that one DRS zone through Tamburello. But Bottas did very well. Russell did very well to defend, and I think well clinched fourth place for him. Charles Leclerc, by the way, finished sixth. So I mean, it's a bit of a he rescued what he could, but I think he should have been targeting a third place finish, minimize the number of points that Verstappen could take off of him. Yuki Tsunoda had a very impressive race, by the way. He finished 7th in that Alpha Tauri, which is way better than his more experienced teammate Pierre Gasly could manage. I think he finished in 13th. 8th was, of course, Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin. Considering how horrible and poor he looked in the first race, good return for him too. Kevin Magnussen in the Haas finishes 9th, and the solitary last championship point for 10th place was taken by Lance Stroll. So Aston Martin having an interesting weekend here as well. I mean, they were pretty bad through the early parts of the season, but they do seem to be finding something. Taking a couple of comments now, BH Karthik, who is on fire, says Bottas would have gotten him if their pit stop was clear. Interesting. Pranay Sawyer says Red Bull, despite having a slower car than Ferrari, are better in making strategy and reacting to changing situations. I don't really agree with this statement that Red Bull have a slower car. I think their cars are pretty much even keeling as far as speed is concerned. I think maybe certain circuits would be more suited to Ferrari and certain more suited to Red Bull. I think Red Bull's major problem was not the fact that they didn't have the pace. It was the fact that they didn't have reliability. Because again, if we remember that even in Bahrain, Leclerc and Verstappen were constantly battling for the lead, and the Red Bulls might have gotten more points if their cars didn't blow up. So they ended up with no points. Similar problems happened with Verstappen in Australia. He ended up having to retire the car due to a fuel pump issue. And so obviously, I don't think Red Bull's problem has been pace, because I think Adrian Newey has absolutely aced the regulations. He's made a very good car. Same can be said about Ferrari, but the major problem for Red Bull so far this season has been reliability. Thankfully for them today, that was not in fact the case, because they managed to finish, get a 1-2 finish. If we're talking, of course, about other, oh wait, BH Karthik has another comment. He says Ferrari is able to achieve high pace at low RPM. Wait for them to tune their engine fully. That is actually interesting. We do know that they will be bringing engine upgrades when the teams head to Spain. So I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens when they turn that engine up. I agree with you. Pranasar says Ferrari have a better straight line speed. That is correct, but in this race, if you notice, I think the Red Bulls were faster. So I think it might also have something to do with the fact that, maybe this circuit just suited the Red Bulls better. They did win the race last year as well. Yeah, after all, if we remember 2021, Max did take the win at the Emilia Romagna GP. So there's also that. So obviously, a very good race for them in that regard because they managed to get a 1-2 this time around. Last time, if I recall correctly, it was Hamilton who finished second. What I think Ferrari would have been biting off any team's arm if they got a second place finish for Leclerc here, but obviously that's not going to be the case. So, you know, interesting race for sure in that regard. But again, it's only an interesting race if you are a fan of Red Bull. I don't think the I don't think the Ferrari fans were very happy. I don't think the Tifosi was very happy with how things went. BH Karthik, who thank you for being one very strong commenter on the stream, says they need to go back to the initial design with black livery. Look, the black livery, I don't think the livery makes any difference to the way the car runs, but I do agree that they might need to go back to their A-spec car because that looked a lot faster in Barcelona. The new car has not been, it's been porpoising a lot. And so I think that would definitely be an issue. By the way, the next race, as we mentioned, is in Miami. It's in Miami, and that'll also be an interesting race because it's a case of entirely unknown new circuits. So what was going to happen is worth seeing. Love Rami says Red Bull has produced a solid, reliable car and always supporting Supermax good rim. I think the problem has not been, the car hasn't been reliable, but it looks like they have indeed sorted it. So good for them in that sense. I think it's very, very good in their part that they have seemingly sorted the reliability issues. Great on them. And so, by the way, obviously, I have been rambling on for nearly 11 minutes, and I think I've covered all major talking points that we have. If you have any more questions, do send them in because now I'm going over the schedule. So obviously, the European leg has started, but they do have a bit of a detour to Miami. After that, you hit some of the more traditional venues because you have Spain, Monaco, then of course Azerbaijan, Canada, Britain. So, a lot of races still to go, and I'm not going to really make any predictions as to how the season goes, but I think it's safe to say that the battle for the title is going to be between Red Bull's Max Verstappen and Ferrari Charles Leclerc. On that note, I will take your leave for now. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this particular discussion for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. If you're a Red Bull fan, go out there and get yourself a Red Bull or any similar drink. If you're a Ferrari fan, just console yourself with the fact that you have 1-2 races, still a long way to go. If you're like me, a Mercedes fan, I think we'll need something a lot stronger than Red Bull to, ease our sorrows, but that's for another time and for maybe not while on camera. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you enjoy our coverage, you want to see more F1 videos, support this one, like the video, comment on it, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's free of cost and we've just surpassed 80k. We'd love for you to be part of our Sports Today family as always. I have been, Love Rami says, Hakuna Matata, Shane sir. Well, Hakuna Matata to you too. And thank you very much for joining us as always. I have been Shane Dias and I will see you again very, very soon. Goodbye.